Okay, everyone at home, I apologize. I thought you were just staring at us and no one had any comments. To rehash, and I guess if anyone objects, we can go back. We did call the meeting to order at 3:30. We've had 3 requests for bill introductions. We had one, Joe Molina and the Bar Association requested one. I requested one on behalf of the KBI, and Representative Heiberger requested one as well. We didn't have any objection. So those were introduced, and we have just opened the hearing on House Bill 2473. And Natalie, do you mind? We're going to have, Natalie gave an overview, but I'm going to have her do that again for you all because it doesn't take very long. So.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2473 removes the requirement that all the district court judges in Douglas County serve on the Board of Trustees of the law library there. So KSA 203127 currently provides that in Sedgwick and Johnson counties, the Board of Trustees of a law library established there would be made up of 2 district court judges and then 3 members of the county's bar association. But then in all other counties that have a law library, the Board of Trustees is made up of all the currently serving district court judges and then no fewer than 2 attorneys in that county. So this bill would apply the provisions that currently apply in Johnson and Sedgwick County to the law library in Douglas County. And I can take any questions.
Do we have any questions for Natalie? No, thank you. On WebEx, as we start our proponents, we have Judge Simpson.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Patton and members of the committee. I'm just here to testify briefly in support of Bill 2473. As you heard, it's a pretty simple bill, but the point of it is to allow 2 of the judges in Douglas County to serve on the Law Library Board, as opposed to all 6 of us serving on the board. And it also allows for the selection of the attorney members of the Law Library Board to be done by the Bar Association, as opposed to conducting an election among all of the attorneys in the county every 2 years. And so the point of it is really just to change where the way that the Law Library Board is made up, and the change just makes it consistent with the way Johnson and Sedgwick County currently handle their law library boards. Our law library is an important part of the community, for the legal community and for folks who come in and are looking up legal information, but it's not especially complicated or something where it makes sense to have a whole lot of people on the law library board. So that's the reason for the change. It's not a huge issue, but it's one that I hope you'll consider seriously, and we'll consider making the change and adopting the legislation. So that's what I wanted to say. I submitted written testimony as well that's got a little bit more detail, although there's not much more to give. But I did want to thank you for your time on this, and thank you to Representatives Neely and Heiberger for introducing and sponsoring the legislation. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions, committee? Do not see any. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anyone else listed as a proponent. Is anyone online or in person a proponent? I don't show any neutrals or opponents. Do we have either one of those?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. Oh, I'm kind of weary. Yesterday was kind of tough, and today I'm just weary. Balance
Representative
issues,
Wheeler.
but I'm not sick.
Okay, it's good timing. Okay, we're going to, I think he's finished with his conversation. Close the hearing on House Bill 2473. And we will move on to House Bill 2474, open that hearing, and again have Natalie give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2474 allows the court to change a spouse's name to a name other than their maiden name or a former name during a divorce proceeding. So current law in KSA 232716 requires the court to order the restoration of a spouse's maiden name or former name at the request of the spouse during the course of a divorce proceeding. This bill would allow the court to order that name to be changed to a name that's different than their maiden or former name. I would note that you guys heard this identical bill last year was House Bill 2098. It passed out of this committee, and then it was stricken from the calendar when it was below the line on general orders. And I can take any questions.
Any questions? Representative Carmichael.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Scott, I just want to make sure that I understand. The law right now says that one can go back to a quote-unquote maiden name, or is it any former name?
Yeah, I believe the words in the statute are a maiden or a former name.
So, for example, if someone is now dissolving their second marriage, they could go back to the name from their first marriage or the name that presumably they were born with.
Yes, I believe so. And if you'll recall the testimony from last year, I think actually the judge kind of mentioned that that was an option.
But even under this legislation, though, you could still go back to a quote-unquote maiden name or any of your former names, or you could pick your grandmother's maiden name, or you could be trout fishing in America if you want to.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the way this bill is structured, if you look at subsection A, we didn't actually make any changes to the subsection that allows the change back to the maiden or former name, but we just added a subsection B that allows that name change to happen. You'll see up in A, if a person requests their name be changed back to a maiden or former name, then the court shall order that restoration. So that's a mandatory thing. In subsection B, we're just giving the court discretion. They may change it back to a different name at the request of the spouse.
And that would be somewhat similar to the discretionary change of name that we have in other part of the civil statutes, because a judge can deny that. As I recall, if it's an attempt to defraud creditors or some other, it's discretionary with the court as to whether I get to call myself trout fishing in America or not.
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Heiberger.
Natalie answered the question I was going to ask.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Natalie. Starting with proponents, Lindsay Ford. Lindsay. Let's see Lindsay online. Maybe Lindsay's written only. Let's go with that. So you have written testimony from Lindsay Ford on behalf of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. Next, I have Melinda Lavonne, and I think Melinda is on WebEx.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hi, my name is Melinda Lavonne. I did submit some written testimony about my experience in getting my divorce and my name change completed. I talked a little bit about how a lot of those processes were further inhibited by the pandemic and different restrictions to offices. For example, the Social Security office is still doing phone appointments and mail-in documents only. So when I got divorced, I wanted to use my middle name as my last name because my grandmother, mother, and daughter all share it. And the way the judge wrote may return to the name of Lavonne did not satisfy requirements for Social Security, even though at that point the DMV had given me my new driver's license and the federal government gave me my new passport. And the last thing I needed to do was change Social Security so that I could also then change my NPI, or National Provider Identification Number. And Social Security rejected it and told me I had to obtain a new name change order, pay the $200 filing fee, and request a court date. I actually had Judge Simpson as my judge. And it went fine, but I felt like, you know, $200 is 2 water bills or 4 pairs of kids' shoes. And I had already been signing birth certificates with my new name and things like that because I had no idea it was going to be such a complicated process because of this issue that can be fixed with this bill. And so I think this bill just has the potential to reduce some repeat court clients like myself. And I think our courts are very busy, and that this should, you know, I do trust our judges to use the same discretion when it comes to name change issues. And, you know, especially in the divorce process, all your financials are laid out there pretty clearly. And so any concerns about people trying to call themselves the Bassmaster or something just to avoid debt, I think I trust the judges to keep an eye out for that kind of thing. So I support this bill because I think it would reduce cost to folks that are already busy making a lot of changes in their life, and it will also reduce burden on our courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Okay, Judge Picorni, I see you're online. I don't have you on my agenda, but I'm guessing you're here to testify on this bill. Is that correct? And you're muted right now. There we go.
Okay. Got it. I was advised I could pop in.
Yep, go ahead.
I accepted the invitation to pop in. I proposed this bill last legislative session, and let me tell you about my own personal experience with this. I had the one that really broke my heart was I had a woman who was doing her own divorce, had filed a poverty affidavit. We'd let her file it without a filing fee. She was divorcing her current husband who was in the penitentiary. And when I asked her if she wanted to change her name, she said, well, I would like to change my name to my mother's maiden name. And I said, well, why can't you go back to a former name? And she said, well, that I divorced him because he beat me, and I don't really want to continue on with that memory of that name. And I said, well, you can go back to your birth name. And she said, yeah, and he sexually abused me. I don't want that name either. And it just seemed to me it was a simple ask, and it wasn't out of the realm of a regular, what we consider a regular name, as opposed to the one woman I did have who wanted to change her last name to Danger Mouse, which I said she couldn't do pursuant to the statute, but I would not have changed her name to Danger Mouse anyway. So it has come up in other contexts. I just do think for purposes of judicial efficiency, just to cut out that step and an additional filing fee for a name change is an easy service that we could provide to the clients or the parties. I still talk like an attorney every once in a while. The other thing that I know that there's always a concern about changing a name for purposes of fraud. But I remind everybody that in a divorce, there's an adverse party, and you don't proceed to that hearing until 60 days have passed at a minimum. Truly, I believe, especially in a divorce with an adversary on the other side, if there was any reason to believe that a person was trying to change a name for purposes of fraud, the other party would bring that up and make that pretty clear that it may be inappropriate to give them a name other than a former name or a maiden name. And finally, there's been some thought that there needs to be publication notice in the divorce itself concerning or some notice concerning the name change. If you actually look at the name change statute, that statute gives the court discretion as to whether or not notice should be given, whether by publication or in any other means, is what it says. And I really always have a concern about the cost, especially in Lawrence, Kansas, of publication notice. For a divorce where you can't find the opposing spouse, it's over $200 to do that publication notice, which in these days seems pretty excessive. And I look back to the woman who wanted to go to her mother's maiden name, when she filed a poverty affidavit and couldn't even file for pay the filing fee for the actual divorce. And I'm open for any questions that anybody may have about my experiences or why I think this is important.
Very good, thank you. Any questions, committee? Representative Carmichael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Portney, you are absolute expert in this area of the law, and I am not. But I think as I read the bill before us, it would allow these name changes not only at the time of the divorce decree is entered, but also at a later date, meaning I think that people could come back a month, 2 months, or a year later, or perhaps even existing divorce decrees could be amended. And I don't have any objection to that, but can you, or for that matter, our revisor, clarify that for me?
I can speak to that. The statute reads, the current statute reads that way. There is a provision for anybody who wants to return to a former name or a maiden name to come back at a later date and time. I think, I'm sure the wording is exactly the same, that directs the Judicial Council to make sure that those forms are available for litigants, and that occurs now.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Judge. I have written proponent testimony from Joe Molina with the Bar Association. Anyone else as a proponent? Do we have any neutrals? Any opponents? Seeing any, we'll close the hearing on 2474. Committee, that is all we have today. We are not going to meet tomorrow. So it said meeting pending, agenda coming. We don't have anything, a whole lot to hear yet. So we'll take it slow another day. We do have 2 bills that we're going to hear on Thursday. And unless someone comes to me with some concerns, we might as well have the 2 bills we heard today, 2473 and 2474. We could work those on Thursday. So be ready for that. That's all. Representative Kincannon's going to be disappointed. I told her we kept her here late every day, and now, I mean, we're just getting through quickly. Anyway, we're lazy, whatever. Okay, well, good to see everybody online, everyone in person. Have a good day off. We'll see you on Thursday. Thanks. Meeting's adjourned.